but you're so far away from them. You're like, how am I going to get up here? It was just, your mind is telling you that you need to go, you need to get down, you need to get off. Your body is exhausted. Your legs are tired. You're breathing heavy every second. It is almost, and it's almost like you're not doing this for anything. Like, you feel like, God, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this? And now I feel like this mountain has turned into a spiritual journey, which
let's go there.
Like a really bad mom. Quote unquote, I'm tired of people in my race, so I need to find me somebody white. This is how I knew that Brian
Don't do it.
was going to be a great physical partner.
Don't tell them. Hey everyone, welcome to the Let's Get Deep podcast, where we have conversations about our lives that most people would never. We did a crazy thing. We told y'all we were going to do the crazy thing, and then we did the crazy thing. We hiked Mt Kilimanjaro in Africa.
I still can't believe we did it. This was not like something on our bucket list. This was not something that we said years ago we really wanted to do.
Really had no desire or even awareness that it was a thing.
We had an opportunity with Compassion, and first of all, that trip was incredible. We'll talk more about that on a different vlog or podcast. We're trying to figure out which one.
One or two.
But that was absolutely incredible. And they asked us if we should do Mount Kilimanjaro. And first of all, when they asked us about it, I didn't know how big it was, but we did it. This is crazy.
And there's a lot to talk about with this journey. So that is going to be the topic of the day, because it is a topic of the day. It is a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
There's so many implications that are much more than just the mountain with this story, especially with this one. She went through a lot, y'all. She went through a lot pre and during.
Yeah, I would say that this was something that, this is not just about like experiencing the hike and what the hike is. I went through a major spiritual journey before the hike and after and during. This was something that God really wanted me to do. So we're sharing this journey. This is not for people like, oh my gosh, I really want to hike Mount Kilimanjaro. If you do, then this is still good.
We're going to tell you about the actual hike, because
Yes.
the hike is crazy. Like it was crazy.
It was crazy. But this was also a spiritual journey. So if you want to hear both, then stay on here, because it gets kind of wild.
And what's crazy is I just realized I'm giving like a hint into it, but I realized we just posted like 2 podcasts ago the grief and loss post, which ties directly into your spiritual journey with this. The timing of that is actually very interesting.
Very crazy.
Okay.
That's very crazy.
So where do we start?
Okay.
Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's usually a good place.
Yep. Okay. So when we first heard about this opportunity, we heard about it through Compassion. We were going to Tanzania to learn about the amazing organization that Compassion does in Tanzania specifically. And we were going to do that for 4 or 5 days. Mm-hmm. After that, they asked us, do we want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro? My first thought was, oh my gosh, Brian should absolutely do it. I was like, this is great. Brian should, you guys know he's done the half Ironman. Like, this is the next step. I was like, this is it.
Lexi didn't even allow it to enter her thoughts that she would be a participant in this process.
Y'all, I have never camped before in my life. I have never slept in a tent. I have never have I peed outside? I don't even know if I've ever done that. I don't think I've ever peed outside.
I need you to experience that joy.
I've experienced it. It's not a joy.
Now you have, yeah.
I'm like, what?
Well, in 30 degree, we'll get there. It's different.
I was not stereotypically versed in the camping at all. I was that stereotypical black girl that did not do these things.
And to be fair, I hadn't been camping since I was like 11. I have not slept in a tent outside since I was like 11.
Yeah.
We glamp, we love going into the woods in a nice, beautiful log cabin with a fireplace where it's warm and cozy.
Yes, easily. And so this was not something in my in my books of what I wanted to do. And for the longest of time, it was just you. You were going to go, and then I was going to do the compassion part, and we were trying to figure out what to do.
Yes, because we're like, so wait, if you're not going to go on the hike, are you just going to stay in Tanzania by yourself for a week while I'm hiking? Are you going to fly back home? Which I wasn't really comfortable with you flying back home by yourself because that's a lot. That's very far away. It's a long flight. You're by yourself. So I was like, eh. But we were trying to figure out what, and I think that was a couple months. Where the plan was just me. And keep in mind, after I did the half Ironman, I was like, I can do all things through Christ. Like, this wasn't even like a thing that I had to conquer. I was just like, it sounds like it'd be a cool thing to put on a list of my resume of activities that I've done in life.
And it started to get a little more into, okay, Lexi, why aren't you doing the hike? What, why wouldn't we do this amazing thing together? Brian was like, this could be a beautiful thing of our marriage, of just our, just our relationship as a whole. Like, this is something that we could do together. And I'm like, show me. Well, I was like, show me a black person. Give me a black girl that has done this before. Let me see a black girl.
And guess what I did?
He had a friend, actually a family friend that climbed Mount Kilimanjaro.
Black woman, like successful, did it. And she went like down the line and told me all the things that it would take. She's like, oh, Lexi absolutely can do this. She absolutely has to do this. And I'll talk to her. I'll convince her. And you got to also keep in mind, I have a background in sales. So I was selling Lexi hard. I'm like, I'm talking about for our marriage, for our connection, for our intimacy. This is the next level of relationship. It worked.
It worked, y'all. So this is where it gets a little real. Once that happened, I started to feel a little bit. Now, mind you, I never saw a picture of Mount Kilimanjaro.
Which is wild to me because I feel like if you type in Africa, just literally Africa, I feel like that's like the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, I didn't look at it all. I don't know. I think there's a reason why, but I did not look at that mountain at all.
I'm pretty sure it's in Lion King.
Really?
I'm pretty sure it's in a scene in Lion King that I'm thinking of.
Wow.
The first or the second movie, one of them.
I said yes, and when I tell you, I was nervous from like the time I said yes to the time I got on the plane. Like, I don't know what happened. Well, I do know what happened. A lot of fear started to come up in me when I said yes. And little did Brian know, I was really, really, really concerned about not just like going on a mountain, but leaving our kids here for 2 weeks. This was the longest time that we've ever had our kids. This was the longest time we have been without our kids.
And that's a whole like subsection of this conversation, but leaving the kids for that long was tough.
It was very tough. And part of the reason why it was tough is because the last couple of trips that we've had, whether it's work or just us going away, which I think most of the time that we have left have been for work, something tragic or crazy has happened. Both the kids get really, really sick. Our dog dies while we're gone. Elijah is having like the worst diaper rash that we've ever seen in our children.
Bleeding. Like it was the last 3 trips I think that we've been on, something happened that was pretty dramatic.
And I think that all of those things like gave me even more worry and more concern. But what we realized is that if you guys haven't seen our grief and loss vlog, watch it. But it was talking about how there was still remnants of that concern and that worry about protection and is God going to protect my kids because a child died? Regardless if you think that, a child is real in your stomach or not, it was very real for me. And so to have that feeling and caring for something and then it died, I think I started to associate myself with the fear. And I started to connect and be more aware of the enemy's attacks versus God's light. if that makes sense.
When were you aware of that?
I would say,
When did you become aware of that? Because I can't pinpoint it, but
You
I don't know
can't-
if you made the connection right away. Did you?
I think I started to recognize that I was becoming more afraid. I would say last year.
Okay.
Like, I was recognizing that I was becoming more afraid. I didn't even tell you until this year, because I thought that I had it under control. And I thought that I was praying about it. I was doing all these, Bible studies. I was, there was times I was even fasting privately because I was just trying to get rid of it. But I was connecting more with with darkness than I was with light. I was being more concerned and more aware of my surroundings, more than realizing that God is protecting me. It was almost like I need to protect myself.
I think it's so interesting. You said like you weren't even, like you didn't even tell me about it because you thought you had it under control, and it took something, an experience or situation being put in front of your face to like see how far deep you actually were.
That was it. I did not realize how deep I was in it until this Mt Kilimanjaro situation came up.
Because it's forcing you now to leave your kids alone and to trust that God's going to protect them. Obviously, we have a lot of family surrounding them while we're gone, but that God is going to protect them. But there was also the other side of fear of you doing this thing.
Yeah, it was both. And when I tell you, all of it started to zero in. And I think that's when the enemy knew that this was going to be groundbreaking for me, because all of the
heavy.
spirit of fear started to come heavy on me once I said yes. And, I would say Brian knows me. When I say yes to something, I'm in.
I was just about to say that.
I was zoning in.
I could tell that something was wrong because, I don't know, maybe once you said you would do it, once you officially said, all right, I'm in. Once Lexi does that, like the birth, when you decide to do a home birth, you were like, I'm locked in. You got your head so strong, and you refuse to let people tell you anything negative, and it's only positive, and this is going to be my story, and God is going to do this. And like, you were all in. So that's exactly what I was expecting with this experience. Once you said you were in, we needed to start training. I was like, babe, we got 4 months. We got to go. We got to do this. We posted on social media that we're now doing this. So now it's out there. The world knows we're doing this. You committed to this. We got to start training. We got to start preparing. And Lexi was like one toe in. Like, she was very loosely training, very loosely. Didn't ever want to like put yourself all the way in.
Yeah.
And I was so confused. I remember you and I had a number of conversations. I'm like, babe, I'm not getting it. What's going on with you? Like, you say you're in, but you do not look like you're in. And this is not something you can just decide to do tomorrow. Like, you need to train.
And I kept trying to figure out like what is going on with me. And I didn't realize how much of a door I opened when that grief situation happened. I did not realize how much of a door was open for the enemy to come and attack to this degree. I knew I was struggling for a long time, but I felt like I was getting some sort of glory. Like, I was getting some sort of like, okay, I'm feeling better. I'm getting better. It's not like consuming me where you seeing me down all the time. Like, you wouldn't even notice.
But my question to you is, okay, you know yourself too. So you know that you're not all in, right? So what was your thought process behind like this period of time? I would say probably 2 to 3 months almost, where you're like, I know this big thing is coming, but I know I'm not doing what it takes to prepare for it. And I'm not really trying to do it, but I'm trying to do it. Like, what were you actually processing during that time?
I think I was processing a lot of myself. Like, I think I knew that I was worried about the kids. And I was worried about because first of all, my mom was going on a trip the same week that we were leaving.
Our nanny was gone for a week during that same time.
Our nanny had her honeymoon that same week.
It was like, oh my God.
So that was just, I'm like, are these signs I shouldn't go? Like, are these signs I shouldn't go? And I'm like going back and forth. I'm like, God, are you trying to tell me not to go? Or is it me trying to tell me not to go? Like, I didn't know. And I'm like, am I strong enough to even hear from God right now on what he's doing? Because my emotions are just everywhere. And so I didn't want to bring fear to you, but I was like, I don't know. I'm just not sure of what we're going to do. Like, we need to really zone in on these kids and all of this. And you're like, it's going to be okay. And I'm sitting here like, is it? And I didn't want to back out, but I also wasn't sure if I should go or not for the longest of time. And again, I'm having these issues with my mind. And then eventually I started talking to Brian's mom, which is my spiritual mother. And I kind of told her very loosely how I felt because she also saw that I wasn't fully in.
She knew.
And she was like, and she was also like, we need to know if you feel this is God or not. Like, do you feel that this is God telling you should go or not? Because I think that a lot of people were concerned about me going, one, because they saw the mountain. I didn't see the mountain, but they saw the mountain. And they were like, Lexi, you need to know if God is telling you to go or not.
Big mountain.
They need to tell you.
And I'm like, this is too big for you just to act casual about. Like, it's too big. And especially, like, I don't want to sound weird about it, but like, you don't run like I do or, train like I do on a regular basis. So I'm like, if you gonna do this, I need you to get right.
Right. And we had a prayer with your mom and your dad. And it was
right here on this couch.
Yep. Beautiful. And it got real serious real fast. And I would say it was the day before where I started to recognize, like, oh my goodness, there is a spirit on me.
Yeah.
There is an actual spirit of fear on me. And I've been associating myself with it. I would honestly say it wasn't even the day before. I think I knew longer than that because I started to get even more concerned about the dark. I started getting more concerned about you being gone. I started to get more worried and more like, just fearful of the kids and at night and just having these scenarios in my head running around. And it started to get so strong, almost like the enemy knew that I was on the verge of being free from it by going on this mountain. Mm-hmm. It's like he almost knew. So he was just like bringing everything in.
I almost knew. He might have known.
Yeah, it's like, it was like, I'm about to hit her with everything so she does not get on this plane. Because I was legit about to not get on this plane.
And I think for those of you that don't know, who didn't watch the podcast, just to give a quick understanding, like we lost a child and had a miscarriage, right? And there's a lot of story behind that, but it was the loss and the way that the loss happened that, Lexi, you lost trust in God to take care of us.
Yeah.
Because it was like, but if you let that happen, what else would you let happen?
Yeah.
Type of thing. And so you were carrying that with you in every scenario.
Yeah.
And you started to question every scenario of, well, if you let that happen, then what if we're gone and this happens? And what if this and when this happens? And then like the trust was now gone with God.
Yeah.
Even though you thought you got it back, because you did get it back to an extent.
Yeah.
But there was still fear that you didn't know.
And hurt. And I think that was the thing. And I started to even recognize this during as I'm processing why I was so fearful or why this has lasted so long, is because I care so much about the people that are in my life. I have such loyalty and care to. And for that to happen is something that I cared about heavy. It was like, God, you let something like this, like I cared about this person and you let them die like that. Like it's no reason. I don't understand the reason. So it was heavy. So to deal with that and realize that I felt like I was being swarmed by this spirit.
Okay. So mom and dad are here. They're praying. Mm-hmm. You said it got heavy. So what happened?
When they started praying, it got to a real inner healing and deliverance session. For those of you who have never experienced inner healing and deliverance session, it could be really strong. It could be really intense. For me, it was a lot of just strong prayer and it was a lot of tears. And I feel like I almost remember seeing like the spirit that was on me. Mm. Like it felt like I knew I had an association with it. And I knew that I needed to be free from it. And the prayer that they prayed was so strong and so needed. For me, I will say that prayer was for me to actually make the move. Like, I know that this is now an assignment. This is now something that God needs me to do.
Yeah.
Because there's, it's almost like I'm going to this place where God is going to rip me apart.
Yeah. And what I thought, something you told me that I thought was so interesting, in that moment, we saw a level of freedom that you had in that moment from the fear, from the anxiety, the worry, all these things that were, binding you. We saw you experience a level of freedom, but even you said you felt like there was a higher level of freedom that you would not achieve until you actually went on the journey.
Yeah.
And went and got to the top.
Yeah. And I knew it. Like, I knew after that prayer, I felt a level of freedom, but I know even now, I don't feel the way that I felt after the prayer. I feel so much more freer after that. Can you realize that I'm talking about this and I'm not crying?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. I'm talking about the grief and loss. This is almost like the first time that I'm talking about it, and I don't feel like I need to cry.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Isn't that crazy?
I heard someone say once, like, when you're free, when you don't have to cry about the trauma that you endured. I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't know how I feel about that. I was thinking about that.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't know if I agree.
You can be healed in my mind, but still just remember and empathize almost with your own experience and just like have sadness that it happened,
absolutely,
but be healed. So I don't know. I felt kind of like,
but I know for me, this is a huge moment for me to talk about the grief and loss. And I feel like when I would talk about the grief and loss, even you guys saw it on the podcast, like, it just came out.
Yeah.
It would not it's not me holding back. This is like, it legitimately just came out without me even thinking about it. I'm like, why is it every time I talk about this, I am crying? And I've never been a person to uncontrollably like start crying. So for me to be this way is like, wow, like I'm really getting breakthrough,
Okay. So now you feel a level of freedom. You feel that there's a level of healing, but you still got to go. You still got to do it because there's more to accomplish on the journey. So now you only had a couple weeks to really kick it in gear with like training and stuff. So like
I immediately started with a trainer, and I started doing that like twice a week. And I did my own little training where I was doing a stair stepper, 50 minutes with a weighted vest. And then I also did walk. I did walk with a weighted vest maybe twice, but I was seeing a trainer. So yeah.
But if I can be honest, y'all, it wasn't enough. Like, it just wasn't.
For neither one of us. It was neither one of us. It was not enough.
And we gonna talk about it because what people described as Kilimanjaro, of like some people had horror stories of like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be so hard, and we're like, oh, okay. Other people were like, it's not that bad. As long as you can walk for a while, you're fine. Like, so we didn't know what to expect. And the people who described it to us, they did not properly describe
No, I don't
this
think.
journey.
But I think it's kind of like when people ask you, like, does a tattoo hurt? Everybody has different types of levels of pain, pressure, all that type of stuff, and we just weren't. We were nowhere near ready. So, you want to go into the details?
Let's start.
Okay.
So day one, we are hiking, and it was easy. Day one was easy. We drove 5 hours in the morning from our hotel to get to the other side of Kilimanjaro to go up the pathway. Like our journey was up a pathway that was like not as congested, I'll say. It wasn't as busy, so there was less people. We honestly didn't really see anyone until the last day.
Yeah.
It was really nice. But our group we had 12 people in our group with Compassion. We had about 12 people with International Justice Mission, who was kind of like going side by side with us. So they were really cool. Some people from England that we got to know. But day one was like 4 hours of hiking. We were all in great spirits. We're like, this is great.
Feeling
the weather
good.
was warm.
I'm always reminded that me and Brian have done like an 8-hour hike before. So we're like, okay, we could do 8-hour hikes. We could do stuff like that.
This was easy. So at the end of the 4 hours, for the first time, we get to camp and we finally see like Mount Kilimanjaro like pop above the trees. It was gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Very magical moment. We're all taking pictures.
But again, we're not seeing Mount Kilimanjaro from
a distance.
a distance. So just to give a little backstory, we were there for what, 10 days? 7 days. We never saw the mountain from the ground level.
For 7 days, it was too cloudy to see the mountain. So we never actually got like the panoramic view of what the mountain even looked like from the ground.
No, so we got a close-up view of the mountain.
Yeah, so now it's just looking like this dome that's popped up
Yeah.
above us, but it doesn't look as intimidating.
No.
So we get into camp, and we're all feeling good, and then camp life hits us and smacks us in the face.
Yeah, it got real. Like, we didn't have culture shock going there, like, at all, Tanzania as a whole. But I will say we had environmental shock when we had to sleep in a tent for the night in 30-degree weather.
I don't know if that's like a real term, but we're making it one. Environmental shock is what we had, because we are in this tent, and where we were, the moment the sun goes down below the horizon, immediate cold.
Immediate cold.
Like it felt like it dropped 30 degrees in a matter of 10 minutes. So that sun dropped. Now we're in our tent, and we're already trying to figure out our lives. Like, where's our clothes and where's this? And wait, did we pack this? And we're trying to figure out, in this very confined space, the two of us and our baggage and our backpacks, how do we change? What layers we're supposed to wear? And we're doing all of this while it's very quickly becoming like 35 degrees outside.
Very cold.
Freezing.
And then you have a bowl of water that you're supposed to wash in. But mind you, to take your clothes off, it's freezing. So we have to hurry up, take our clothes off, do a quick wash under your arms in your, private area, and then hurry up, put some clothes back on because you're freezing. It was that first night was strong. It was strong.
And your sleep, okay, I know y'all know what camping is, but like, I'm going to describe it to you. You are sleeping on the ground, okay? And not just the ground. Everywhere we went, there was like
rocky.
It was rocky, but there was a slight slope. So when I would go to sleep, I would wake up a foot lower in the tent than where I started at, because my body's sliding down, and the tent is already so tight. My head and my foot could touch both sides at once.
Yeah, you were long.
So I'm like, and it was very uncomfortable.
I will say that after the first night, we got better at it, but our first night going out in the cold in the middle of the night, having to put shoes on, unzip, hurry up and rush to the bathroom. And the bathroom was in a tarp where you had a very low toilet, and the toilet was through a hole.
Your bathroom was, I peed in the trees.
Brian, peed outside, but during the day, you have to pee outside, so it was an experience. We were with an amazing group that had everything that we needed. Like, if we forgot something or we needed something, like,
great.
They did their research.
We called them the mamas of the Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yes.
They had all the stuff.
And then we had amazing guys that were from Tanzania. They were incredible. But the first night was a little rough. It was a shock for both of us.
It was. And, we got through it, but yeah, it was a lot.
I will say after that, the nights were getting easier for us. For me, it was getting harder with the hikes because we're going high. Like, we're going on an incline a good amount of these hikes.
The second day was a 9-hour hike. So that was like, you go from like happy-go-lucky to like, oh, this is real. Okay, we're actually hiking today. Like,
every day we were also able to get reception, so we were able to talk to our family briefly, but it was enough where it was just cool to just say hi for 2 seconds. But like, every day it got a little bit harder. And I will say, for me personally, like, Brian's an athlete, like, he was great, but every day that we were on this mountain, I was like the last person to make it
into camp.
Yeah, make it into camp. We had like each day we would be headed towards another base camp, and I was the last person to make it.
Her pace was just a little slower than everybody else's, and I kept telling her, like, girl, it's fine. We're all going to the same place. It's all good.
And I'm not trying to. It wasn't like it was a competition of like, oh, I need to make it with everybody else. I'm thinking about this big night that everybody's talking about, summit night, where I'm like, bro, if I'm struggling with this, what's going to happen with summit night?
So before we get to summit night, I do want to make a commercial break to talk about these African porters and guides. These people are incredibly strong,
They're
fast,
amazing,
agile. It is unbelievable. I don't know if we can post it. Maybe we can post a video of these guys, but they would have not only their duffel bags and tents and supplies on their back, they would have our duffel bags
Yes.
and supplies on their back as well. So they, on the top of their heads, they're carrying my duffel bag on their head and then all their stuff on their back. And they're not just barely getting up the mountain. They're going twice as fast as us.
they're beating us every time.
They're like, excuse me.
I mean, they're
We're all,
just going.
pausing to let them go by because they're just flying up the mountain. I don't care what type of incline it is. They're flying up the mountain with all of my stuff and their stuff.
And we had our day bags with our camelback for our water. And the rest of it, they were carrying like the rest of our clothes, like the
would
stuff
go
that
from
we
camp
needed
to
at
camp
night,
with all of our stuff.
all of our food and supplies. Like they would be doing, and the food was good. Like it wasn't like we were out here, barely surviving on food. Like they were making great food.
It was really good food. By day 6,
We got tired of the food.
we were sick of rice because
Yeah.
rice was in every meal.
Yes, it was.
But
They
shout out to the
they had a very specific meal that they wanted us to have, but it wasn't like each one was the same, but I will say overall the food was great. The food was great. If
So-
you ever wonder that, it's amazing.
One of the things that I kind of had in my head of what camp life would be like was like, we're going to have great time. Well, first of all, Lex and I both brought books. We're
We
we're
did.
going to read at night. Some of the people in our group brought card games. We're like, we're going to play cards at night with the group. We're going to build a campfire and like tell stories and like share moments. I'm thinking this is going to be like 2 to 3 hours of like bonding time at night. When I tell you the moment we were all done with dinner, it was so cold. We're like, good night, everyone.
Yeah.
We all rushed back to our tents every single night, burrowed under our insulated, less than 0 degree insulated sleeping bags to just stay alive is really what it was. None of those things happened. Lexi and I did not read not one time.
No, I think I read a little bit the first night.
I didn't crack
read
my
like
book
a
open, not
chapter
at
the
all.
first night. After that, no, I'm tired. I'm trying to gather my thoughts. I'm trying to gather my body, like figure out what I need. It was a lot. This whole thing was more of like mission to get to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. Like it wasn't like, oh, we're going to rest and have a vibe. Now, mind you, we did a 6-day hike towards Mount to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. Other people, there's 8 days. There's 10 days.
Yeah.
There's a lot of days that you can do to get up to Mount Kilimanjaro. 6 days was a little tough. That was a little
It
tough.
was a little aggressive.
Yeah, it was a little aggressive.
So the second day was 9 hours. We get to camp 2. We wake up in the morning, and we didn't realize this until we woke up. Lexi literally wakes me up at dawn. It's like 6 a.m. or just before 6 a.m. She goes, Brian, you need to look outside. Literally, we unzip our tent, and we are above the clouds.
It's beautiful.
It is nothing but clouds all below us, and the sun is just peeking up above the clouds. It was one of the most magical scenes that you're just like, where am I right now?
The views throughout the whole mountain was just unreal.
Indescribable.
It was indescribable. It's something that will stay in my mind forever. Like it just feels like you are like, even now I'm envisioning us on that rock. Like it was just so surreal. I would say if you climb it, you will be in awe of just the beauty that surrounds you in general. As you're walking, as you're hiking,
Yep.
you will be in awe. But each day, I will say, was rough for me. Brian was with me the entire time, just holding me down, just walking with me. He never left my side those first days. Like it was just, you were holding me down.
So day 3 is a shorter hike, but a very intense hike. We got some time to chill at camp. Day 4 is like a 6 to 7 hour hike across what they call the saddle, which is just what looks like deserted wasteland in the desert. I
Yeah.
would also equate it to Mordor of Lord of the Rings, if any of you have watched that. But that's what it felt like. And that day was the day before summit night. But that day during that hike, I started to get like, I don't want to call it altitude sickness fully, but my head was hurting.
Yeah.
It was starting
We were
to hit
getting
me.
pretty high.
We were at 14,000 feet at
Yeah.
that point, and my headache started coming strong. And I was really trying to shake it, but we hiked for probably 4 hours. 4 of the 7 hours, my head was pounding.
Yeah, and we took Diamox. So we took Diamox a day before we started started the trek to Mount Kilimanjaro, and we took it in the morning and the night, and you still got a headache.
It helped. I'm sure it would have been worse if I didn't, but I was struggling. So we get to camp. So this is night 4. We get to camp, and I'm like, I cannot have this headache going into summit night. We got to figure this out. So I'm popping Motrin. I'm like trying to rest, trying to do whatever I can. But finally, like right before I go to sleep, it goes away. But why don't you tell people about the schedule of pre-summit
Summit night. So we get back after what was it, a 7 hour hike. We get back and we are supposed to have dinner like at 5:00, go to sleep at 6 p.m. We never going to sleep that early, but we're supposed to go to sleep at 6 p.m. And then we're getting up at 11 p.m. to get dressed, get ready, get in line, eat breakfast, get in line by 12 a.m. to start the hike to the top.
For those of you that haven't realized, that's midnight.
Yeah.
So we just hiked for 7 hours. They're shoving dinner down our throats, which because of the altitude and because of our exhaustion, we're not really hungry.
But we have to eat.
But you have to eat. They shove it down to make sure that you get your energy and everything else. You go to sleep they say you can go to sleep for 5 hours. Yeah, go to sleep at 6 and wake up till 11. No one fell asleep at 6.
Yeah.
Not a single person.
Summit night is is the night of all nights. Like, we know that this is the night that everybody's talking about, that's saying you can't compare it to any of the other hikes that you've done. You can't even think about like what you can compare it to. It's nothing to compare it to this night. And they're saying like it's absolutely horrid, quote unquote, from Ben. Like there's
shout out Ben.
Yeah, he was our main director with this, but there was nothing to compare it. And to know, for me personally, to know that you've been the last person getting to these hikes, getting to base camp every night, you're the last person and you're struggling, and now summit night is about to happen. I'm like, my heart is like in my stomach. Like, I feel like a huge pit in my stomach. I'm trying to not be nervous. It's literally like I took my hands and I just started shaking because I was that nervous.
And it's like, how am I supposed to go to sleep at 6 p.m. when I know I have to wake up at 11 p.m.? I'm nervous about the nighttime. I'm tired, but I'm like, it's 6 p.m. still, right? It was just weird.
It was a hard night.
We're also trying to get ready for that point and know what we're going to wear and know the gear and pack all the gear. So we didn't get to sleep till probably, 7:30?
7:30. I would say like somewhat 8. Like, we took some medicine and melatonin to try to go to sleep. And we kind of went to sleep in and out, but it was hard because it's like, this is it. Like, all of us, our whole team was just like, all right, we're all a little nervous. The morale was really low that night.
We did a morale check. It was like, yeah, no.
Okay. Right. Even before we started this whole hike, like I had a conversation with Brian's mom and dad, and we were just praying. And I just remember crying when they were praying because I knew that summit night was going to be a night that God was going to take me on a strong journey. So I was already nervous about what this would look like. I knew that physically I was going to struggle, but also mentally that I was going to go through a battle.
You know how people sometimes say like your nerves before something happening are worse than the actual thing happening?
Yeah, no.
That was not the case.
No.
I don't think our nerves were enough to justify what we went through that night.
Man, oh man.
It was crazy.
It was crazy. So let's just get into it. Just to give you guys a look of what it is. So we get up at 11. We start the trek at 12. It's supposed to take 6 hours to get up to the top. And then you get to the top. That's Gilman's Point. And then you have 2 hours to just get to the very top, which is 600. I think they said 650 feet higher
Sure.
than Gilman's Point. So if you want to get to the summit, which is the top, which is 650 feet more, then you you trek an extra 2 hours to get to that point. From summit, 3 hours to get down. Hopefully you take a 2-hour nap, and then you go to the next base camp, which is 4 hours.
So off of 3 hours of sleep, you are hiking for 15 hours that day, starting at midnight.
Let
me paint the picture a little clearer for you all. It's pitch black. The only thing you can see from midnight till 6 a.m. when you reach the top, the only thing you can see is your feet in front of you. You have a headlamp that just shows you enough to see where your next step is. When I tell y'all, for 6 hours, that plays with your mind a little bit. I'll be straight with you. Like that. Yeah. That's heavy, right? Like I can only see this. And we are on legitimately a 45-degree incline. And not like a stair stepper situation where your foot just lands on solid ground and you just push yourself to the next step. You're on an incline the entire time. And it's not just an incline, it's gravel.
It's gravel.
So when you put your foot down at this angle, your foot's slipping. You have to like grip it and make sure you have a good grip. Use your walking sticks to pull yourself up. And you're doing this for 6 hours.
Yeah. And then there's a point that there's huge boulders that you have to face where now you're kind of climbing on your hands and feet, and you can't even use the polling sticks anymore. Like they're pulling you up at this point. And that was Jamaica Rocks. Jamaica Rocks.
That was for about an hour and a half at the end. And when I tell y'all what Lexi went through,
what both of us went through.
Go ahead. Why don't you describe where your mental and spiritual state was during that 6 hours?
So in the beginning, I finally got this place. I'm like, all right, I'm here. Like, the stomach in my pit kind of settled a little bit, but I'm like, all right, God, whatever you want me to do in this, I'm here. I'm walking. I'm doing it because I didn't want to do this in the first place. This wasn't something that I really cared to do, right? But I'm doing it because you want me to do it. And I'm here. So I'm walking, I'm going. And just like before, we had to leave the group because I'm the slowest.
I think we stayed with them for like the first hour and a half. I think maybe 2 hours.
I would say 2 hours we stayed with them.
For the first 2 hours, you stayed up with them and, things were rocking. And we started with good energy.
We did.
Like, we started with good, okay, all right, let's do this. Hey.
Yeah.
About 2 hours in, it started to get a little hefty.
It started to get real hefty. It was to the point where, because we're going on a 45-degree angle the majority of this hike. And we are like, I'm passing out. Like, when I mean passing out, I mean like when we got a break, it's almost like I couldn't get to the rock that I wanted to lay on fast enough. Like I just collapsed. And what was crazy is that not only am I collapsing on the rock, Brian is collapsing on the rock.
Listen.
Now, each day I have got, when we went to base camp, each day, Brian was fine. Like Brian would just keep moving.
She was like, that was kind of hard, wasn't it? I was like, yeah, it wasn't bad.
It was okay.
It was okay. It wasn't tough.
Now, today, that summer night, I collapsed and I saw Brian collapse with me the same way I did. And I looked at him, I said, is this hard for you? And he was like, yeah, I'm kind of tired. And he didn't tell me the full story at the time, but it was one of those things like, I had a huge moment where I'm like, oh my God, if Brian is having an issue with this, who am I? Like, Peter, I know. I was like, who am I? I was like, Brian is an athlete. He does a triathlon. He is struggling with this. I almost flipped out. And I was like, I got to keep it together because I have to continue on this journey. But I was freaking out.
Lexi was like, I'm not supposed to be here.
I'm not supposed to be
I'm
here.
not supposed to be here no more. Listen,
It was tough.
And the crazy thing is, like, she's not exaggerating. We literally both, whenever they said, okay, you could take a break here, we literally just fell. Because it was almost like, I don't want to waste time getting to the ground and resting. I just want to fall. And we would fall. Our guides were so great that we didn't even have to get our water out from our backpack. They just took our waters out for us and like gave it to us and gave us our snacks because we were so exhausted.
I was so exhausted. My nose was running constantly. They just had to wipe my nose and just get it off my face.
We were little babies.
I mean, it was so rough. Our feet were hurting. We were exhausted. Our bodies were just tired. I felt like we were I just felt like we were having the hardest time just getting to the next step. And Brian had his worship music loud because his headphones weren't working. My headphones weren't working. So at this point, it's literally just us and God at this point.
And here's the problem. Like every other day that we have hiked, the breaks that they give us are 15, 30 minutes. Like they're like, oh, we'll take a 15-minute break and then we'll hike for an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever. Then we'll take a 30-minute break. Then we'll hike for 2 hours. Like the breaks were great.
Yeah.
So when they said breaks, we're like, oh, breaks. Okay. They did not let us take a break more than 3 minutes.
No.
Because they're like, it's too cold. Oh, have we not mentioned? It's 20 degrees outside.
It's super cold.
We're
It's
in
super
full
cold.
parkas because it's freezing. So they're like, you can't take more than 3 minutes or you will start getting too cold and you won't be able to warm back up.
And you'll get too tired.
And you'll get too tired.
And we couldn't even close our eyes. Like we were so exhausted that we wanted to close our eyes and almost go to sleep. And they said if you do that, you would pass out because of the air is so thin up there. It's almost like you need to keep yourself awake.
It's like there's layers to this that we are trying to add to it because we keep forgetting. But yeah, the higher you go, we started the day at 15,000 feet and we're ending at 19,000 feet. So the air is so thin. Like you are struggling to breathe. You are working through every breath. And if you take 10, 20 steps after a break, you're already breathing heavy again.
Yeah.
Check to the point where I have a resting heart rate of like 52. The night before summit night at 15,000 feet, I checked my resting heart rate. It was 90.
And mine's is higher than his, so I couldn't even imagine where mine's was.
Like resting heart rate was 40 beats per minute higher just existing at this altitude.
When I tell you guys, I cannot express how much I felt like I was at the end of myself. We left the group, like the group had to pass us because we were stopping so many times because I just couldn't keep going. I had to take more breaks. If you were to look at a 45-degree angle up a mountain and you see how far people were ahead of us, it made you so discouraged because you are so tired and you look up and you see how far you have to go and you just see the lights
You can't
of
actually
where
see
they
where
are.
you're going. You just see their headlights.
Yeah,
way
and
up
they
there.
haven't made it to the top. But you're so far away from them. You're like, how am I going to get up here? It was just, your mind is telling you that you need to go, you need to get down, you need to get off. Your body is exhausted. Your legs are tired. You're breathing heavy every second. It is almost, and it's almost like you're not doing this for anything. Like you feel like, God, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this? And now I feel like this mountain has turned into a spiritual journey, which it did. Because in my mind, it's almost like I'm seeing me on a mountain, but now I'm talking to God like, what are you doing to me? You know, are you going to keep me? Am I going to even make it? Was this all for nothing? And I felt like I kept looking. I remember myself kept looking up to see how far I had to go, how long was this going to take, and I was like, God, I don't even know if I can get to the next step. And I remember like looking down, and God literally had to tell me, stop looking up. Like, stop looking up. Just look at the next step. Look at what I'm trying to do in you instead of looking of how far you have to go. And I literally, for the next, I don't even know how long, I just kept my eyes down and I let my light just show literally the guide's foot in front of me. And I just followed each footstep until I got to the top. And that is what kept me. And it was such a strong word to me because it was almost like God was telling me, like, I'm not trying to have you focused on the top part. I need you to focus on the feet in front of you, the next step. That's all I need you to worry about is the next step.
And I've been telling people this, but one of my favorite scriptures is where he says, he'll be a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. And I felt that in this moment so intensely because it shows me that there's some times where God will only show you the literal next step. He'll be a lamp to your feet. So all you're going to see, and that's what he was that night, all you're going to see is what that next step looks like. You don't see what the path looks like. You don't see what direction, when the bend is coming, how far do I have to go? You don't see any of it. And there faith and trust comes in, right?
Yeah.
There's other times where he'll be a light to your path. So he'll reveal a little bit further down what it looks like and what the vision is and where he's taking you and all these things. But that night, he was a lamp to our feet.
Yes.
And we had to be okay with that and trust that you are going to get us every step of the way. And this journey, we don't even know when it's going to end, how long it's going to be till the top. We don't know where we're at.
Yeah.
But one step in front of the other.
Yep.
And in fact, the guides all in Tanzania all have a expression, pole pole. It means slowly, slowly. And they just kept telling us that over
Like,
and
it's
over.
okay. Just take your time. Take your
slowly,
time.
slowly, one step in front of the other. What I didn't tell Lexi during the night was that I was struggling with that headache again. So about an hour into the hike, the headache came back and it was pounding. And it was very, very difficult to the point where I actually think it was a little dangerous where I was at in my body because the fatigue and the sleepiness that came over me on top of the headache, I definitely started to get a little dizzy. The guides asked me if everyone was okay, like anyone getting dizzy. And I was like, no, because I knew if I said that I have a pounding headache and I'm dizzy, I knew Lexi was going to look at me like, oh, you're not. Oh yeah, no,
I would have easily
we're
went
done.
back. I would have been like, nope, this was it. It wasn't me, God. It was him. We need to go down. We need to go ahead and take me down.
There was a couple points where my eyes were shutting as I was walking, and I had to like snap myself out because I felt myself starting to lean. I don't think it was me passing out. I think it was I was just very fatigued, like sleepy, dealing with the headache.
Yeah.
My head was spinning, and I did feel like I was losing track of the ground a couple times. Like, so I'm battling with all this, but at the same time, it was actually really beautiful. I told Lexi this later. She didn't really know this, but the entire time, I never prayed for myself. The whole time, I don't know why. I didn't really make like a conscious decision to do that, but it was subconscious where I just kept praying for her. I kept praying for Lexi. I prayed for her strength, her energy, her motivation, her, everything for her that she needed to get to the top, for her to get out of this experience. Like, I'm just interceding for her, behind her as she takes a step. And what I realized was, like, in doing so, every time I poured my energy and prayers and support into her and she would take one more step, I knew I was going to take one more step right behind her. There's no way in life I was going to quit on her. So if I got her to where she needed to be, then I would be right behind her. And it felt like it was the essence of what marriage and love and relationship is about. It's like, if I take care of you and you take care of me, we both get to where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it felt like such a unifying experience.
It felt like we were so one going up and doing it together because I saw how much you were pouring into me, and I was praying for both of us because I felt it felt like we were in this together because it was both. It was difficult for both of us.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the difficulty at the time of where you were, but I felt like we're in this together. Like, we're doing this together. Like, we're going to hold each other in this. Like, there would be times like I would just lean on Brian and Brian would lean back on me when we were tired. Like, it was like, this is hard, but we're going to work through this.
It was really beautiful.
It was.
To be honest.
It was.
We felt very connected.
Yeah.
This. Go ahead. So you get to the top.
Getting to the top, it was almost like as soon as I got to Gilman's Point, I was like, okay. It's like my hands shook getting on, like touching the top of the mountain. Like, I could not believe God got me up there.
Yeah.
And I just bawled. Like, my eyes just started crying. I just felt so much freedom because one, my kids were okay. Two, I was okay. Three, you were okay. But mainly, God did all of this, wanted me to get to this point, to feel this moment and tell me, I have you.
Yeah.
I got you. I did all this so you could feel this. Because I know who I am. That's what God was saying. Like, I know who I am, but you needed to know who I was. It was one of those things of like freedom, immediate freedom came from that.
Yeah.
And I just started worshiping God. I just was just in tears crying.
Do you feel like it was that next level freedom that you needed?
It was. I do. I really do feel that. Everything started to come together. One of the things that Brian asked me after this whole thing, he was like, do you think that there was a level where God wanted you to see the mountain as a whole and know like you could overcome it and you could conquer it, and just know from the beginning, like, this is what you're going to do. You know, there's a level of freedom in that. And to be honest, we did not see that mountain until after we were done climbing it, and we saw the mountain ground level and saw how massive it was.
It is difficult. Obviously, we have people in our community that live in Tanzania or have seen Mount Kilimanjaro, and y'all can attest, I have never seen something so massive in my life.
It was so huge.
I cannot describe how I've seen large mountains. We've been to Colorado. We've seen large mountains, okay? But to have the clouds only touch halfway up the mountain, and there's another half of the mountain above the clouds, is like, and just how large. Lexi described it best. She's like, it felt like a monster was coming out of the sky.
It literally feels like a monster coming out of the clouds. And we did not
massive.
see that mountain until we finished climbing the mountain. And when Brian asked me, like, do you think that there's a level where God wanted you to see the mountain and knew you could overcome it and knew you can conquer it? I was like, maybe for a different situation, but for this, I knew that God did not show me that mountain before I climbed it because he knew that I probably wouldn't do it. And also, he was trying to tell me that the top of that mountain was none of my business. It was none of my business. He wanted me to focus on just the next step. That's why when we were climbing the middle of the mountain and he told me not to look at the top because I was getting so discouraged, he was like, I'm not trying to have you look at the top. That's none of your business. Focus on the next step. Be a light unto my path. I am trying to show you that there is a light that is just trying to show you the next step.
In fact, to the point where the guides actually told us, we asked them, why did we go at midnight? And there's a couple reasons why, but one of the main reasons, they said we go at midnight because if you saw in daylight what you had to accomplish as you're going up the mountain and how much further and how much higher and how much difficulty you had to go through, they said many more people would quit.
Yeah.
Many more people would give up before, instead of just going in the dark step by step.
And I knew that is why he did not show me. He wanted me to trust just the next step. And I know that even to this day, that is staying with me, is that I don't know all how I'm going to get to everywhere God wants me to go. But if I could trust him with the next step, I know that he will get me to where I need to go.
Yeah.
That's not my part to worry about.
Yeah.
But
so obviously we told y'all the whole, what happens next. We had to get down. So that was a whole journey. And then we get down, we get a couple hours.
Oh, you don't want to say that you went to Summit?
No matter.
Okay. Well, Brian went to Summit. He did. I encouraged him to go. He doesn't want to talk about it, but I encouraged him to go to Summit.
I was like, well, we said we were going to do it together. And Lexi was like, I got to the top, I'm ready to go down. So I was like,
we did it. We've accomplished. Everything else is extra credit for me.
For me, I was like, if there's 1 inch more, then I want to get to the 1 inch. So
there was a congratulations at Gilman's Point. So I was like, thank you.
So I went by myself with my 2 guides, and we got there in probably another hour and a half, which was
You had 2 guides?
yeah.
I thought it was just Jackson.
No, there's one other guy.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, he didn't make it.
David?
He kind of like chilled. No, not David.
Oh, okay.
So it took like another hour and a half to get to the summit, and I'll just share my little testimony briefly because we're getting long on this podcast. But when it came to the Ironman, we've shared this before, but for me spiritually, in the spiritual place that I was in and with the race and everything, I really wanted like this euphoric moment of celebration and just like spiritual revelation at the end of the race and like having this really big epiphany and this overexertion of emotion. And I never really got that at the end of the race. I felt satisfied. I felt very relieved. I felt accomplished, but I never really got like the spiritual and emotional side of what I wanted out of that experience. And a part of this experience, my prayer was like, God, when I get to the top, like, let me feel the emotion of this thing. Let me feel the weight of what I just accomplished and be in the moment and not just be like, oh, okay, check that off the list and keep going. Because sometimes I can be really task oriented. I accomplish a task. I'm like, cool, keep going. I don't celebrate it. So when I got to the point where I turned a corner and saw the summit and the sign that was there, I just broke. I immediately started crying. I felt like there was so much release of everything that it took to get there. And it was like everything that I wanted it to be. It was this huge realization of what I just accomplished, what I had to endure to get there, and like this release of emotions and tears. And even when I was sitting at the very top, because let me tell you something, there's the sign, but there's a rock behind the sign, and the rock looked like it was the actual tallest point on the mountain. I was like, I don't know where the tallest point is, but that looks like it. So I stood on the rock just to make sure. If someone says, did you get to the tallest part? I was like, no, I stood on the tallest part, the rock. I stood on the rock. So I'm sitting on the rock, right? And God brought the spiritual revelation as well. And I won't share it because it's personal, but there was something he shared with me and something he gave me in that moment that was like, it was very simple. It was very simple, but he gave that to me and I was like, okay, got it. Like, I felt so much peace of that whole experience. Like, I got what I needed to get out of this experience.
Yeah.
So then we go back down, which was a whole, like, they don't tell you about the way down because you have exerted everything to get to the top of energy to get to the top. And then you're like, wait, how are we getting down?
And that's why we literally, when we got to the base camp for Summit Night, there's helicopters that are coming in and out.
Just flying overhead, choppers.
Because people are getting picked up from the top.
Because they can't get back down. They're like medically
And you
evacuated.
know how much it costs for a helicopter to come and get you? Believe me, I know because I thought about it. $3,000.
Lexi's looking up our bank account like, we can afford it.
I'm like, $3,000.
So we hike down. Takes like 2.5 hours to get down. Our feet, our legs, jelly. I think we got down the mountain because we really fell down the mountain. But we get to base camp. I immediately got chills and a fever because my body's going through it.
Yeah.
Lexi is asleep. We're trying to, and then they're like, all right, guys, backpacks up. Time to go.
None of us think we can actually hike the rest. Like, none of us are like, man, it's almost like we all feel this survival mode. Like, do we got to get off this mountain? Are we like, we are so tired and so depleted. How the heck are we going to get off this mountain? We got to get up.
To the point where I've never done this in the whole trip, but I felt my head hurt, my body's shaking. I'm literally freezing cold, shaking in the middle of the day and it's warm. And I'm like, something's wrong. I have a fever. I have chills. Like, I am struggling. My appetite is gone. They call us for lunch. It's the first time, but I said, no, I'm not going to lunch. I've made it to the top. Y'all can't force me. So I don't show up for lunch. Well, they show up at my tent. They say, knock, knock, zip, zip. They said, you need to eat. And I was like, no, I'm good. They're like, no, you need to eat. They're like, if you can't go, then we'll bring something to you. What do you want? I was like, fry me an egg or something, you know? So
they asked you?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know they asked you.
Yeah, they asked me. They're amazing people.
Yeah.
But I was like, ugh. So they brought me my omelet egg and I had to go to the bathroom. So I went to the bathroom and I overheard them talking about me. outside the bathroom. They were like, if he doesn't eat, he may need to stay here today. And I said, oh, y'all not leaving me on this mountain. When I tell you I ran back to the tent, I said, don't. I ate.
Let me tell you, we wasn't getting we gonna get off this mountain.
Oh, what
Everybody
I'm gonna do is get off this mountain.
was feeling motivated to get off this mountain.
So with my fever, with my chills, put my backpack on, and we hiked 4 hours.
I think he took like 3 Motrin. He was like, I gotta
pop, let's go.
Yeah.
Y'all not leaving me on this mountain with my whole group headed down. I'm going. So we get down to the camp, spend the night. Next day, 7 more hours of hiking down, and we're finally done.
Oh my gosh. And I think somebody told us this. I think this is my mom told us this, is that our bodies know that they're in survival mode, for all of the days we did not feel any pain.
There was
no soreness until we got off the mountain, y'all.
And it wasn't even the next day. It was that night.
It was that night. We felt all of the soreness.
We got off the bus. Everyone's like, oh, whoa.
Like, it was so bad. I'm like, our bodies really know when we need it to kick into gear. I'm telling you, we talk about all those crazy things where moms pick up a car. Like, it just shows you there's no way out of all these days that we did not feel any soreness. We've been walking constantly, going on inclines. Like, this is not like we were just going flat. We were going on inclines for hours. And then we do this, and it is just, we're in pain.
Think about the other hikes you and I have done for like 8 hours in Tennessee. We were sore.
Isn't that crazy, babe? Like, I don't. Sometimes I think that's not real, but I'm like, no, that's real.
I also think maybe a part of it is when you continue to work out the next day, it makes your muscles not as sore.
But it happened that night, babe. It didn't even give us a chance.
You're right. We didn't even get a chance.
We didn't even get a chance to wake up and feel better.
Crazy.
Like, that night we felt sore. It was like, it was almost like our bodies knew, like, all right, we're done. And we were able afterwards to look at that mountain from the ground level, and we all just stood in awe. There's no way. We were like, there's no way we went through that.
The whole bus, we were all talking conversation, and one of the guys goes, hey guys, look. We all look, and we just, for the next half hour, we're like, as we were driving, it was like, I can't believe it.
I can't believe we did that.
This makes no sense that we started there and went there. It makes no sense. But and to give some other perspective, because we forgot to share this, Lexi was talking about the little washy-washy situation. Yeah, we stopped washing after day 3.
Yeah, everybody stopped washing after day 3.
It's too cold.
Yeah.
We were stanky as heck, re-wearing all of our clothes probably 2 to 3
all
times.
Of us.
Everything stunk.
This was real raw dogging it, y'all. Like, we were out here.
We haven't showered in
these
6
streets.
days.
I mean, you talk about being thankful to take a shower, to be in a bed, to not sleep on rocks. We got back to the hotel, and we stayed one night in the hotel, and before we got on the airplane, and oh my goodness, we were so thankful.
Lexi and I were like, oh, by the way, because at the hotel, the hot water runs out. Let me tell you something. The hot water runs out.
So we took a shower together.
We took it together because we're not risking one of us not getting some hot water and then our first shower back.
Oh my gosh. And it was just like a reflective moment for both of us, I think.
We actually got back to the tent after Summit. We got back to the tent and we both just started crying together.
Yeah, because we didn't meet each other because I let him go to the summit. And we trusted this tour guide, our guide, Freddie. He was with us every day, just helping us get to base camp. And he got us up that summit, and I was able to go down with him, and Brian trusted him. Like, it was good. But we got to that moment and we just cried together. I think it was so much joy to see how proud you were of me and the fact that we were just here together and can't believe what we've done together. Like, it was a really beautiful moment. What really made me think about it was like, what motivates you? Like, what gets you to the end? And when you feel like you're at the end of yourself, like, I realized there's a lot of things that can motivate me, but up until it gets to a point. And I was like, Even when Freddie was talking and he was like, your kids, do you hear them? They're shouting like, go mommy, you hear them. And that motivated me so much. And it almost made me a little teary eyed. I couldn't cry because I would break down. So I was trying not to cry, but it was that was motivating me. And it was knowing that like I was literally at the end of myself and God was picking me up. Like I literally felt him just like, I'm going to hold you together, because if it wasn't for him, I would fall apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I'm different than you for sure. When I tell myself, when God and I come into an agreement that I'm supposed to do something, it doesn't even become motivation to do it. It's like, I have to do it. It's weird. Like I tell my mind that there is no other option.
Yeah.
So I just figure it out. Like your body has to figure it out. Your mind has to figure it out. Your spirit has to figure it out. So the things that I tell myself as I'm like going is like, you can't stop.
Just got to keep going.
You can't stop. Like that's not an option. So what's your other option?
I think I question sometimes how, like it starts to, it's not about when God tells me, it's if God told me. And I think that's how the enemy tries to get me.
Yeah. Is this really God?
Is this really God? Are you just making this up? Is this? And I was like, there is no way I could have made this up. This was all for God's glory. This was all just for God to make a statement, and he did, because I would never do any of this myself. This was no like, oh my gosh, I really wanted to do it. No, there's nothing in me. There was nothing in me that wanted to do this. This was all to sacrifice myself and put myself on the altar.
Lexi and I say that this was the greatest thing that we will never do again.
We will never do, unless your mom wants to do it, because she was on that mountain with me. When I talk about our community, they were praying for us. Like my mom Cole was praying for me every hour. My mom was waking up
night.
Every day. My mom was waking up at like 3:00 in the morning to try to talk to me.
Yeah.
At one point she was getting up herself, but I think later on she started getting up because of me.
And the moms held us down spiritually, physically.
Our sisters, our friends, like they were
whole
all
community, man.
Yeah.
All right, quick funny story, and then we'll wrap up. So tent life is really funny because the tents are paper thin. So you can hear everything that's going on. Shama, shout out to you for snoring all night and keeping us all awake. But the funny thing was, Lexi and I are in the tent. I think this was night 2. Lexi's feet were cold, like freezing cold. And the whole first night, she could not figure out how to get them warm. She double socked, insulated sleeping bag, couldn't figure out how to get them warm. Didn't matter. They were still cold. So by night 2, I was like, all right, babe, it is what it is. Let's do this. I'm freezing cold too, but I was like, I need you to put your feet between my thighs, my skin.
He was gonna he pulled his pants down.
Try not to get too graphic here. I pull my pants down so she can put her feet right between my thighs and I can squeeze them to get them warm for her little freezing toes, just to make sure that they get warm for her. I'm like, I will sacrifice for you.
I'm telling you, Brian was my rock. Every day, every night, every moment. Like you were just there for me no matter what. And you're always like that, especially when it comes to a trip like this or doing something that is difficult for me. In general, if it's difficult for me, I feel like you automatically shift to just being there. And I am also thankful that when you were struggling, you at least told me enough where I knew that I could still be, and that I could still be there for you even though I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I think that was something that I wanted you to know too.
I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. So Lexi's got her toes in my thighs. And what we took a second to realize was, oh my God, how do we sound to other people outside of the tent? Because we're the only married couple in this whole group.
Yeah. And
we realized all they heard was Lexi putting her toes in my thighs and me going, oh, and then she going, oh my God, that feels so good. and then there was one part she was like, can you open them a little bit wider? And we were like, oh my God.
Oh
they
no.
think, oh. So we had to shout to the rest of the camp. We're like, hey guys.
sorry.
We're not doing anything. It's like, yeah, that sounded weird. Sorry, guys. Just
They're
warming up our
like,
toes.
what is going on? So they made jokes like every day talking about us in these thighs.
They gave us an award at the end of the journey for the tent with the warmest thighs.
No, they said the warmest tent.
Oh, we had the warmest tent.
Because we were the only married couple there. So, you know, it was an interesting vibe.
Listen, this was a fun story to retell because there's just so much packed in it.
Oh my gosh.
But
we thought we could do this in 30 minutes.
yeah, no. Here we are.
Here we are.
Hopefully y'all are still here, you know. But we love y'all and cannot wait to keep exploring different topics and fun stuff. So make sure to hit us up on all our social media platforms. Wait, I'm gonna see if I can do it. You ready?
Okay, let's see.
Hit us up on Instagram @_the Cole Life _ hit us up on TikTok @the Cole Life. Hit us up on YouTube, The Cole Life, and check out our podcast, Let's Get Deep, and check out our Instagram for Let's Get Deep @ _Let's Get Deep Pod.
Yes. Yes. You got it.
See y'all.
We love you guys. Thank you. Talk to you soon.